Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight to this meeting. Can everybody hear me, first of all? If you cannot hear me in the back, you might want to move up to the front, because this is all we've got. Okay. The October fires were a wake-up call, not only for the residents of Salem, but throughout the state. Many residents learned for the first time about the vast forested land right here in Salem. And along the edges of those woods live many who enjoy the proximity to wild spaces, quiet nature, and wildlife. This meeting was suggested several weeks ago by some residents of the Cloisters, who are in the back there. As you know, the Salem Woods fire was right up to the Cloisters property line, as well as the condos off Whalers Lane. At the same time, there was a larger fire on the other side of Highland Avenue behind Walmart. While most of the residents of Salem experienced decreased air quality, those who live near the fires experience the anxiety that accompanies an emergency event like this. Since the fire, city officials have been working hard to prepare for the possibility of future fires, because the past few years show a pattern of drier conditions with no evidence of changing patterns anytime soon. And I think for all of us, the LA fires were an additional alarm bell, again alerting us to the need to address this now and to take action to try to avoid future fires. Something I think we do well in Salem is take the opportunity to learn from events here in Salem or events outside of the city that share common elements with our community. And departments may not push this information out on a regular basis, but they are happy to share the lessons learned with the community. So tonight, I'm honored to introduce Mayor Dominic Pangallo, Fire Chief Alan Dion, and Police Chief Lucas Miller, and the Ward 4 Councilor John Harvey. And then over to the side are some more members of the police department. And everyone will be around afterwards to answer any other questions. After we hear from the mayor, Chief Dion will talk about the fires, fire safety, and risk areas for future fire activity, followed by Chief Miller, who's going to talk about how his department works with and supports the fire department. And then after Chief Miller, we'll take questions from the audience. This meeting is being recorded by SATV, so it's very important that when you speak, if you speak, that you have a microphone to speak into. Otherwise, your voice will not be heard on the recording. And so Councilor Harvey is going to help make that happen. So with that, Mayor Pangallo.
All right. Thank you, councilors, for organizing this meeting, and to everyone being here this evening. I also want to point out we have the assistant solicitor, the assistant attorney for the city, James Wellick, is with us, as well as the chief of staff from my office, Lisa Peterson. As the councilor mentioned, after the remarks from the chief, there'll be a Q&A, but I will also be sticking around afterward. I know that some people don't feel comfortable asking a question in a public setting and they would rather have a dialogue one-on-one. I will be here for the duration if you'd like to talk to me afterwards. You can also email me, mayor@salem.com, if you want to send something to me, if you'd prefer to put something in writing. As the councilor mentioned, following the fires from this past fall, as well as the situation in California, I think it's fair to say that the dangers of brush fires are foremost among the minds for a lot of us these days. And I want to start by saying just how incredibly proud I'm of the response that our Salem Fire Department had to the brush fires that took place here in Salem, and also to all the responding mutual aid agencies and departments that came to our city's assistance. Chief Dion will talk a little bit more about what that mutual aid consists of, but there are around 60 different entities that send assets here to Salem to assist us. We're fortunate to belong to a regional task force that supports their fellow municipalities with specialized aid in times of crisis like that. And this past fall's fires were also exacerbated by the fact that Salem was not the only community that was experiencing that. There were simultaneous brush fires across many communities in the North Shore, which I think made the response of those agencies all the more important and powerful here. So it creates a real special challenge having multiple simultaneous emergencies. In addition to the departments that responded from other cities and towns, we did have DCR, which is the Department of Conservation and Recreation. They have a forest fire division that came. MEMA, which is the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and the National Guard, all of which responded to the emergency. After any public safety event, whether it's an emergency that happens like a fire or a flood, or if it's a planned event like our October operations and haunted happenings, the departments will collaborate with each other in an after-action review with one another and with external partners to determine what worked, what didn't work, lessons learned, and how they can improve for future similar events that might happen. So with the likely increasing probability of future fires, given the impact of the climate crisis that we're experiencing as far as droughts are concerned, we're working very intentionally to make sure that planning for future similar fires is being carried out by the city and by the departments. We're looking to make investments in the kinds of specialized equipment that we don't have currently in our fire service here. We relied on mutual aid from a lot of rural towns that have more forest areas to provide that kind of assistance, and I think we recognize that if we have some of that specialized equipment here, we would be able to respond more quickly and more effectively. So we're looking at what that equipment is and how we can start phasing that into our own capital planning. But also the kind of training that we need for our fire department and our emergency first responders to be able to respond to those kinds of incidents. And I'll let the chief talk more about that. But one example I'll add is that in our most recent fire contract, which was being negotiated during the brush fires, there was a decision made to add in urban forestry as one of the educational credentials that the city was going to provide some additional value for in their firefighters. And that was a direct response, I think, to what we saw as the rising need to have that be a skill set that we wanted our firefighters to have. On the topic of preparedness, we also are making some substantial investments in a consistent communication system for our police and fire departments, for all of our public safety personnel. The radio system for Salem Police and Fire is 45 years old. It's pretty outdated, and it lacks the interoperability that I think we need to keep our community safe. So the city has been using our American Rescue Plan Act funds, the largest allocation from our ARPA award, actually, just over $3 million for a public project to completely upgrade that system to an entirely new system. I expect that won't be the only capital expenditure we make when it comes to adding to our first responders' capacity to be able to respond to these kinds of emergencies. Salem has typically had to contend with crises related to a changing climate more in the vein of coastal storm surge or large rain events, that kind of extreme weather. But I think it's abundantly clear now that we also need to be strategic about these specific kinds of events as well and plan for those into the future. So I'll turn it over to Chief Dion to talk about a little bit more about that. And again, thank you to both the councilors for organizing this evening's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I won't be as eloquent as the mayor, but I'll do my best. I'm going to speak in a couple areas that I'd like to cover. There was a lot happening here at the end of October and November, and I'll do my best to sum it up here so everybody has a clear understanding of what happened, how we dealt with it, and what we can do moving forward. So I'll speak first and foremost to the timeline. October 26th was the first day that we started receiving calls for smoke up off Highland Avenue at 540. We found a fire in the woods behind Walmart up in the area of Kane Road. You may know it as the Campfire Road, the Campfire Girls Camp. It's a property that sprawls up into the forested area, and there's a large cell tower up there on the hill. We had one engine company in the woods and another, and by 9 o'clock we had our entire department up there for a good portion of the night. We pulled everybody out around 2:30 in the morning. We secured the perimeter and prepared for daylight and hoped for the best. That morning, the fire's head died down because in the evening hours it does get a little atmospheric favorable conditions, and we were able to enjoy a little lull. But knowing what was coming that day, it was a red flag day. We had wind, and the conditions were as dry as we ever seen. So when I arrived at 7, the fires were already starting to flare up. I had put a call into the marshal's office, and the fire wardens were already there. So we requested a task force, and we also requested the air wing, and thank goodness we did. That Sunday afternoon, anybody that lives up off of Lions Lane, they may have seen us. It got a little exciting. The fires were as close as I've ever seen to structures here in Salem. And we were just fortunate that the air wing had arrived on time and the task force had the assets that we needed. The task force that came that day had close to 35 firefighters and 10 different vehicles, from command vehicles, tankers, brush trucks, all the things we don't have here in Salem in an urban setting. And to us firefighters, you give us a 2.5 wood frame structure and we can command the heck out of it and fight a fire like it's nothing. You put us in a woods fire with 100 acres burning, and it's a different experience than all of us have been trained for. So as the mayor mentioned, I'm working with DCR. We're expanding our training, and we'll be doing training in the spring for our entire department in conjunction with all the departments on the North Shore, because we do see a changing pattern here and a trend. These fires, I believe, are going to continue. So on that first morning, we were fortunate the task force came. We set up a unified command, which is all part of the incident command structure that we use in the fire service. The mayor actually stayed with us for the entire day. He chose to be up at the fire instead of enjoying haunted happenings. I was happy to be at the fire. So we cleared that night, but we understood that the fire was not out and not even close to being contained. But again, it darkened down as it cooled off. But we called for a task force again in the morning. I got the same contingent of support. We didn't ask for the air wing because, unfortunately, on the same day that Salem's fire lit off, my good friend, the chief from Middleton, had called me around 9:30 in the morning and said, "Do you guys need anything?" And I said, "We're working with a task force. We should be okay for now." And shortly thereafter, a fire started in Middleton and burned for 31 days straight, and they burned over 400 acres. So he kind of jinxed himself by calling me. But they pulled through as well, and that was some of the challenges the entire region was dealing with. The second day, again, speaking to the timeline, we had the task force there, and we worked diligently for almost 14 hours in the woods. And we cut fire lines basically using existing trails, paths, roads, anything that could slow the spread of the fire. And we contained it, but it wasn't under control. So I went to bed that night a little exhausted, probably around 11 o'clock. And at 11:30, my phone rang, and we had a phone call for another fire. This was the one off of First Street, up behind Home Depot, and I see many of the residents here. That one came in around 11:30 off of Federal Court, and our guys went in there and it had already made a run up a hill. Terrain is our biggest enemy, terrain and wind, and the fuel source was there, and there was no stopping this fire. So we gave it a good pushback, and then we pulled everybody out of the woods. There was some treacherous conditions on the left of the trail at Federal Court with sloping trails that fell 60 to 80 feet into ravines. So we decided it wasn't safe, and we set up a perimeter and waited for daylight. I called the marshal's office. We had the air wing there probably by 10:30, 11 that morning, and we had another task force, and we went at it hard. In that fire, I felt like we had better conditions to contain it in, because at the Cane Hill fire behind Walmart, the fire basically spread into 3 or 4 fingers. One finger spread down towards the Lynn line and Camp Lyon. The other one was up by Cane Road, then behind Walmart, and eventually Lions Lane. And then Osborne Hill, the new development, it made its way over there. Peabody was working it on their side, Lynn was working it on theirs, and we had our entire department there. With the fire off of First Street, we could access it on most sides of the fire, so we had about 80% containment within about 18 hours. The most challenging areas were the ones behind the condominiums. As you know, the streets are cut into the woods there, and there is not a more beautiful place to live. But it does come with some inherent risk, and I'll address those as I close. The day went well. We got about 1/10 of an inch of rain that night, and that slowed things down, and we had the task force in, and we mopped it up. But as all you know, the fires didn't go out. We dealt with 27 straight days of fires burning in the woods, and the smoke was just horrendous for every single one of us. I live in this neighborhood as well. The Lynn fires one day turned on us, and they burned 400 acres in 2 days, and most of that smoke went towards East Boston, but on one morning it did come towards us, and it was brutal. On several days, we had the smoke from the Middleton fires and the Boxford fires, and then the rest were the result of our fires. So if you had to ask me what was the worst part, it was the smoke. It was horrible, and it took its toll on everybody, the residents and the firefighters as well. So after 4 days, we didn't call for any more task force, but we continued to respond regularly. And what this did, along with all the other communities, is the region was taxed. If we put 5 engine companies and 2 ladder trucks fighting fires in our woods, there's got to be companies that come into Salem to protect the city. And when they come into Salem, they're taking engine companies from their communities. Well, a lot of these communities were dealing with what we were dealing with, so there was just no companies to come in and provide relief. So thanks to a robust mobilization plan that's been in development for over 20 years and it's refined continually, the plan did work, and it worked fantastically. It allowed for communities that weren't impacted in the central part of the state and the southern part of the state to come up here to the North Shore and to the Merrimack Valley and fight the fires up here, while allowing us to continue operations and manning the trucks and the stations in our communities. Who runs this mobilization plan? Well, it's overseen by the DFS, the Marshals, the Fire Marshal, Department of Fire Services. NARAC is a contingent player, and MEMA. But essentially, it's the Fire Chiefs of Massachusetts. We have several organizations that I'm part of, Essex County Fire Chiefs Association. We take care of our regional mobile plan. And then the Fire Chiefs of Massachusetts, we have a state plan. And as I said, it's quite robust. If you look it up online, it's just look up Fire Mobilization Plan, and there's hours of reading. But this plan, when put into place, it worked. So I would give all the credit, kudos where it's due. The organization of chiefs in this state, they get it done, we get it done, and it showed in this fire. Did we have challenges? Absolutely. Some of the biggest challenges we faced statewide, as I already mentioned, was that we just ran out of assets. And it was determined that we did some after-action meetings since, and it was determined that we weren't too far from our breaking point where we would have had to call in out-of-state resources. New Hampshire did send apparatus to the northern part of the state. Maine sent apparatus. And we had opportunities to bring air vessels in from Canada had we needed them. And we were almost there. One more big fire, and it would have broke the system. Fortunately, here in Salem, after the first initial 4 days, it was more of a nuisance than a risk. So moving forward, our department, as I mentioned, we're expanding on the training efforts. With DCR, they're a great resource, just amazing, knowledgeable people that know what needs to be known when you're going to the woods. They know how to pick an area to cut a fire line. They know how to light a backfire and burn a hill so it won't come back and sneak up on us after we leave the area. They have the knowledge that we don't have as urban firefighters, but we're looking to expand on that. Equipment, you know, when you're part of a mutual aid and mobilization agreement plan that we have in the state, it only works if you give and get. So we did a lot of getting. We had a lot of towns like Topsfield, Ipswich, Lexington, Concord, they all came out with their brush and forestry trucks and tankers, but unfortunately we don't provide that service to them. So I'm looking to maybe augment our community asset plan and have something so that when the region is in need, we can fulfill the need in both directions. We have plenty of engine companies and qualified firefighters and ladder trucks, but I anticipate that this need will continue, and I'm gonna work towards developing our department in that direction. Other challenges we faced, I mentioned earlier, this couldn't have come at a worse time. It was during haunted happenings. Our force works many extra hours. Normally we run a 17 to 19 person shift, and during haunted happenings, especially on the weekends, we run as many as 30, 35. So if you can imagine those firefighters working the overtimes there and then coming in working all night and all day and trying to keep these woods fires, it was exhausting, and without question, everybody in the department stepped up, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It didn't come without expense. Overtime costs money. It didn't come without damaged equipment. Trucks break, tires go flat, and tools get broken, boots get ruined, so forth. So these things, they definitely challenge the department in many ways. But overall, I think we came through it with flying colors. The most important thing is we had no injuries. Thank God. These people were in the woods, some of the most horrible rock conditions, uphill, downhill. Some of these areas haven't burned in 25 years. The walking is treacherous. Fire can get around you. You could fall down. It's just so many horrible things can happen. So we used a lot of good safety measures that we're trained with. And like I already said, there was no injuries. Other challenges that we faced, they involved more or less the fire load. It's definitely the forests around here. We can't burn them. There's no way you can keep the fire load down. And when they do go, there's sometimes 2-3 feet of debris on the ground that will burn. Fortunately, the area that burned should be okay for a couple years to come. Not all of it burned. I had the warden from DCR do a survey for me, and he estimated we burned 35% of our fire load, forest fire load in the city of Salem. You could have fooled me. I thought we burned a lot more, but I'll give you some areas to think about. The Salem Woods over behind First Street and Whalers Lane, we kept that fire on the western side of the nature trail, if you guys know the area. So the Salem Woods is only about 60% unburned. When you go down towards the railroad tracks and you cross over the railroad tracks into South Salem, behind Salem State, there's an equally large area, and that hasn't burned in 40 to 50 years. Up behind the Cedar Crest area, Loring Ave, up off the left sides of Loring Ave. These are just some areas that we have our eyes on, other remote areas off of Swampscott Road. So we're not done with this. There's plenty of fire load in Salem. There'll still be fires to come. The area that burned is still capable of burning some more because we didn't burn 100% of it, but let's hope that's the end up off of Highland Ave, because I'm kind of sick of the smoke as well. As I close, I'll just mention a couple other things. Some ideas to think about. In Salem, I took a position that my predecessors took. We don't allow outside burning in the city of Salem. You can't have a campfire. You can't have a chimney. You can't have anything outside. And I know some people disagree with that, and I understand. I live in an area that, well supervised, we could have a fire that would operate safely, but there's so much more to consider. There's no way to police this. We can't do it by home, by permits. The DEP has all kinds of regulations when it comes to burning. They consider the smoke nuisance, the ceiling, the atmospheric pressure, all these different things that impact fire and smoke. So we don't allow fires in Salem, and that's that. But a sad part of this, as dry as it was, and as many code reds as the mayor's office put out, we were still having calls for people with campfires in their backyards. Some of them right up in the neighborhoods where we were having the fires, which I just couldn't believe it. So yes, it's an unpopular position. There'll be no compromise on my part. That regulation will not change, and I think that's in the best interest of the community. There's 25 communities in in Massachusetts that resemble Salem: Lynn, Lawrence, Lowell, Waltham, Watertown. All of them have year-long burning provisions. 25 that are within the CMR laws, and I'm looking to put our community into that law group. And there's another 17 that don't allow outside burning, similar to Salem, with local ordinances. So it's in our best interest, and that's not going to change. As I close, I'll give you some suggestions for a little fire safety. First and foremost, there's many resources. You can go online. You can go to the FEMA website and look for wildland safety fire tips. It's a great source and a wealth of knowledge. The NFPA has also some information. DFS, Department of Fire Services, and our very own Salem Fire Department website. There's all kinds of links on the internet, but a couple key things to remember. You got to keep the brush away from your house, and I don't mean off of Whalers Lane. The pine trees are great; they're sort of near the houses and stuff. As long as they're more than 5 feet from the structure, and you don't have any brush or debris under the trees. Somebody was asking me, should we cut all those pine trees that are up close to the houses in that beautiful development? I say no, but certainly keep the brush from accumulating under those trees, because if there's no way for a fire to get under that tree, then there's no way for that tree to hopefully burst into flames. So that's the answer to the question that I've received several times from that development up in the Cloister and others. I think there's a couple developments up there, but they're all in that community. Just keep your debris away from the tree lines. I'm not a big fan of bark mulch, including under those trees. The bark mulches sometimes spontaneously combust, and they can cause fires. You shouldn't have bark mulch up against a building if it's within 18 inches of your siding. So you look at your foundation, measure up 18 inches. Some homes, which hopefully aren't being built anymore, have siding that go right down to the ground. You got to make sure the bark mulch is away from the foundation if that's the case. A lot of people putting rock crushed stone within 3 feet, 2.5, 3 feet from the foundation. And then the rest is just common sense. As I already mentioned, no outside burning. When you're using your grill and it's bone dry out, maybe cook indoors or be extra vigilant. And finally, and lastly, but not unimportantly, smoking. Still the number one cause of fires in America. And I would venture to say they probably cause their fair share of wildland fires in as well. So smoking is, you throw it into a pot outside of your porch and snub it out. And if it's not entirely out and it's a little breezy, you could get the woods going. So these are the things that we still face today, even with the cigarettes that somewhat extinguish on their own and other items like that. It's still smoking, and that's still the big thing. So I covered a lot. I jumped around a little, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we face here in Salem and what some of our planning is. And I hope I gave you some tips that might be useful. And I'll be available for questions at the end. Thank you. Chief Miller.
Hello, thank you all for coming out to see us. I will not be as eloquent as the mayor either, and I won't be as verbose as the fire chief. But I did bring some lifelines with me. Captain John Burke oversees my community impact unit and is responsible for a number of other things in the police department, but one of my most valuable players. And Dan Musto, one of our community impact officers, who does more than his share of work in that unit. I don't mean to be irreverent about the fire chief. The truth of the matter is, I remain filled with admiration for what the fire department did over the course of the days of that brush fire. And I was proud to do a very, very small part in directing traffic around the fire trucks. We were able to use a drone. We have a relatively fledgling drone program in the police department, but one of our drones has a heat signature camera, and we were able to help direct the fire department a little bit using that. We are seeking to expand that program, and again, in as much as I don't want to be my job taken away by flying robots. The drones really are useful in all kinds of ways. I know some people are apprehensive about the police department being able to spy on people using drones, but really the main purpose of our use of drones is public safety. Besides being able to see hotspots from the air, we can also cover the coastline for missing people much more quickly using a drone than we can officers on foot. So I think it's a good program, and we'll continue it. I wanted to talk a little bit more about evacuations and notifications. How many people in here are subscribed to Code Red? I'm glad to see so many people are, but I really encourage anybody who isn't to go to the Salem City website and sign up. It is the fastest way we can get information to you, particularly when there is some element of danger. However, when there is life-threatening danger, when there's a fire, when there is some sort of police emergency, we will go door to door. An officer or a firefighter will come and make absolutely sure that a structure in the way of a fire or an active shooter or 100 other things that keep me up at night, we will get people out, and we will make sure that they are out, whether they're sleeping or not answering the phone or didn't get the code red. We will make use of other things too. Social media, again, it's a great way to get information out there, but it can't be relied on when it comes to life and death. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about what I know is on some of your minds, which is how did these fires start? Did campers lighting campfires start the fires? And fire investigations are generally a team effort between the fire department, fire marshals, and police detectives. Obviously, they have much greater technical expertise than we do, but we have much more familiarity with law enforcement than they do. But it becomes a team effort. That being said, I don't know. I don't know how these fires started, but I think it's a distinct possibility that somebody with a campfire was responsible, at least for one of the many the many spots that Chief Diane had to deal with. I know that you all have questions, and so I'm going to end there, but I'm happy to take any, I think, as are the other speakers.
How's everybody doing? Sorry about that. As you know, I'm John Harvey, Councilor Ward 4. I will be taking questions. I do ask that we kind of keep it in an orderly fashion. I don't need people answering questions that other people have asked. That's what we have these gentlemen for. And we only have one mic, so I'm going to be running to you, back to them, to you, back to them. So bear with me. So if anybody has any questions for anybody in particular, just raise your hand. I'll bring the mic to you. Like I said, I'll have to bring it back to them and I'll try to get to everybody. So just bear with me. Start right here.
Linda Ferraresso, 67 Aurora Lane. And my question is for Chief Miller. And I really appreciate appreciated you talking about the communications during any event like this. I know we live in this forested area, and I was this was the morning on the 30th, I guess. It started the night. I'm talking about the one off of Highland Avenue, First Street. I was getting, I keep hitting this.
It may be out of batteries. It may be going off.
I'm going to hold it just like this. I was getting calls from people who were at work saying, what do I do? Do I come home? Should I come home and hose down my house? And I had some ideas myself. Should I be out there hosing down my yard or whatever? And I know there's something came out at 8:46 that morning. I woke up at 6:50. I saw that. I'm not touching it.
We can hear you.
Okay, fine. I woke up at 6:30 and could see what I thought was fog. And when I opened my slider, it was smoke. I closed the slider and I said, oh goodness, the fire at Walmart has flared up again. Almost 3 hours later, 2:46, I get the message on my computer that says, oh, something is going on first and whatever. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of close to me. That was until 2-something in the afternoon when Councilor Marcello did send something to our property manager there. There was nothing else that came out helping the people who live there to know what to do. Is there something like, and I'm a code red person, and is this a time to use a reverse 911 where the calls would go to people who were home wondering what to do? I was just trying to, is there any other way to get word out? I know you tried and you got some out, but it was a long time between 8:46 and the middle of the afternoon. And I said, I have other friends in the city calling saying, are you okay? What's going on? And I go, I don't know. That's all I'm saying. Is there other things we can do that help with communication to those living in the area? And I know everybody is busy, don't get me wrong.
I think I mean, I'll answer from the police perspective. And more often we deal with other incidents than fires. But one of the barriers to getting good communication out fast is we don't know the root of that. We don't know how expensive it is. We don't know what the right response is yet. And I do understand an interim message might be helpful. It is something we try to do. But as you said, more often than not, we're dealing with the event that we're all concerned about, and that has to take precedence. I'm thinking of the bombing at the Satanic Temple as an example, right? We were really trying very, very hard to figure out what we had going on. Was there somebody running around right at that moment doing this? And so communication had to take not a backseat, but slightly behind what we were doing.
Testing 1, 2, 3. This is my name's Tim Walker. I live in Cloister Condo off of First Street. My question is to the community impact team. I have 2 homeless people that live in the woods, probably about 100 feet from my unit. We've tried to move them, and it actually moved them closer to the unit. So my unit abuts the woods. So when I look off my deck, right up there, right within 100 feet, I see this tent. My concern is twofold. One, it's first and foremost the safety of my wife when I'm not around and they're 100 feet away or so. It's a little unnerving for her. And I've heard that they're harmless and they're this and they're that. Well, that's all well and good, but obviously I think there's some mental issues there. So from a safety perspective, that's one thing. And then the fire. I woke up that morning, the chief was explaining, 4 a.m, and literally within the same distance, 100 feet, I had a wall of fire coming towards our unit. We've lived there for 22 years, my wife and I. We love the unit, but I'm really getting to the point where if I have to look out, and not only, it's not just seeing them, and I understand that I'm not trying to be mean to these individuals, but I also, I pay taxes, and I would like something done about those 2 individuals. And I'm not trying to dump them and have it be somebody else's problem, but what's ended up happening, they've actually moved closer. I'm looking for them to move, if you're familiar with the area, Farrell Court, the woods, and then Cloister. So they're right now on the edge of Cloister. I would like them, if they have to stay in the woods, I guess that's fine, although the fire thing, I don't know how they're allowed in the woods, but can we at least move them over? So we move them not just back, it's more over towards the middle, so that they, I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to have Farrell Court people have an issue with it. I'm not trying to do that. I guess my frustration level is extremely high, and I have to give a shout out to Patty. And the community impact team has certainly tried. They've moved them once, so it just moved in the wrong direction. So again, what can be done to move them? Or in some ways, I don't understand why they're allowed based on the fire chief's, comments about just a cigarette butt. I didn't mean to take too much of your time.
I can speak on it. Does everyone need me to use the microphone, or can you hear me? Yes, for the recording? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Hi, folks. My name's John Burke. I'm a captain with the police department. A lot of the work I do involves the community impact unit, a lot of work
response is, oh, they lie, they don't have a place for us, and I absolutely have a place for them. So I echo your frustration. Those two individuals are on my kind of list of more important people to deal with, and I can't give away exactly what I'm trying to do, but I am trying to get them out of there for you. They should not be there.
And if it's not out for whatever reason, and again, a shout out to everybody, you guys eventually just trying to deal with it, so I appreciate that. If you can't get them up per se, and you move them to the middle, or the woods between, to a south walk, to the main space instead of, do I have to look at those individuals?
You shouldn't have to, and especially where we have a place for them to go. We have a city ordinance that revolves around the camping, and I've gotten them a place to go.
I think I can add, Salem didn't have a no camping ordinance, and we took really great pains to craft one over the last year. And the city councilors who are here I think will back me up on this. It was very difficult to get everybody in agreement, and not everybody was in agreement about what kind of ordinance we would have. We wrote the ordinance really to help deal with the encampment that was on the South River. It was sort of our most pressing homeless issue at the time, and it worked pretty well. We were able, after a while, to move that encampment along and get the vast majority of the people into that transitional housing that the captain mentioned. However, there were certain restraints put on us that prevent us from dealing immediately with people in the woods. As the captain mentioned, there's a 72-hour kind of grace period that we have to give people that we felt really was appropriate for people who were already in an established encampment. But where somebody's in the woods and we say, hey, you have to move, they can move, as you guys have both attested to, just a short distance away, and the 72 hours starts again. So it's something that we're gonna maybe revisit, but it's again, as the captain said, it's a frustration that we share with you. But that doesn't mean we won't try. And in many cases, where there are people who are camping or living elsewhere in Salem, they will move if we ask them to, because they don't want to be a problem either. That's the case with many of them, if not most of them.
I just wanted to add something. There was another couple that were living out the woods, and I'll attest to the work of Dan Musto and others in my unit. Those individuals were willing to work with us, and we were able to get them housing. And it took us probably 9 months to do so. But it shows when people are willing to work with us, we will get them where they need to go. I'll add a little bit kind of on I think you touched on the fire issue or the danger of people in the woods. So we know that people that are living in the woods in encampments are cooking. We've seen them up there with propane tanks. We've seen them up there with fire pits. During when the fire after Walmart was particularly bad, there was an individual that we had to go into the woods and get out of the woods because he was refusing to leave, and we had to use a bit of a legal mechanism to do so. So that just shows the importance of people not camping in the woods, and like the fire chief says, not burning things in the woods, because that's an incredible risk. Now, I can't tell you if it started from one of our outside campers or someone tossing a cigarette, like the chief mentioned, but I echo your sentiments. It is a danger having people living in the woods, because we know they're cooking, we know they're using fuel to build fires.
Hi, Elena Curios, and I'm in the Sanctuary Condominiums. Your plans to keep fires in check, or whatever your plans are to make sure that like dead trees in the woods, dead trees in the wetlands, is it the city's responsibility to clean those out, or can you not touch them and let Mother Nature take its course? How do you control that? Because if we have an overgrowth of, dead trees and even other trees in the woods, doesn't that create more of a fire hazard?
On public land, I could comment most of the Salem Highlands and the woods there. Those are public lands. But to go in there and start removing all that debris and so forth, that's probably not, it's not going to come easily. I think it would come with a great effort. Some of the land up off of Highland Ave that burned, a lot of it was privately owned land. We're still trying to determine who the exact landowners are. I know that the Lions Camp owns a lot of the acreage that burned and so forth. Up behind your condominiums, the Highland Park and the Salem Woods, there's no plan in place or no measure that I can think of to go in there and remove the debris. Anything along your property lines, you would certainly be well within your means to go ahead and clear it back a little further. If the fire were to burn, in the woods 60, 80, 100 feet away from your home, and any fire lines were normally existing with lawns and well-kept, manicured landscaping, then it probably isn't an extreme risk to have them burning in there. So I don't know that we'd put the effort into getting everything out of there, and I wouldn't even know where to begin. But if you keep the propertyscape in your areas, well maintained, as I know they are, keep your brush low. Anything that's dry, keep it away. Don't get into the mulch thing if you can help it. And then if the fire's burning 60, 80, 100 feet in the woods, we should be okay. Could it blow up and become serious? Yeah, I'm not going to say that's not possible. But in reality, it would just mostly burn at the lower levels to the ground level, and I think would be okay. I don't have any plans to remove anything.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Paul Bawa. We live along Whalers Lane and up against Salem Woods. To go back to your comment, I've looked because we have tree branches that grow over from Salem Woods into our property and drop, and I will trim those. But looking at the ordinances, we're not supposed to do anything in those woods. I'm just wondering, along places where there is housing, can there be, my brother-in-law and wife's sister live out west, they do mitigation lines where they go back 50 feet, just enough so that the fuel is gone, it gives the firefighters enough chance to get in there and do what they need to do to protect the housing. And just by cleaning out the debris right along the residential areas of things. So that's the first question. The second, and this is something that I know comes with its own set of complexities, but there's a huge community of volunteers. A lot of communities, especially out west, have volunteer fire departments that they're trained in these kinds of things. Maybe it's just logistics support when you have a big event like this, but I would think that when you're really stressed and something happens quickly, you could have community members trained, volunteer fire department members trained to come out and help and do some of these things so that it keeps it from getting out of control too quickly. And then the other thing is potentially, if you have, for some of these folks that are in the woods, some designated areas that they can transition to while you wait, that are safe areas, maybe that's a temporary fix while you try and figure out, 3 strikes and you're out or something to modify the ordinances or something. Thank you.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear about the mitigation areas.
Anything abutting and overhanging your property, I think that would be a great idea to cut it back. And I'm not a legal expert. I see one of our lawyers back there. But if it was my property, I would certainly cut anything that's hanging over my land. I know that if my neighbor's tree is hanging over my property, I'm well within my rights to trim it. And I believe, I'm not hopefully speaking out of turn, that would be the case with anything coming out of the forest. And I do see the solicitor shaking his head in agreement. Yeah, I mean, if someone is willing to take that upon themselves, I don't know that anybody would complain, but
So I'll take that back to our public services department and see what we can do about it.
All of the wooded areas, those are small areas that, if you have a big fire, that's a huge cost compared to that first houses compared to
Possibly, yeah, we can take it up with the tree warden and the public services department. I mean, to the chief's point, if there is a branch overhanging your property or brushing your property that originates in public property, I believe you can trim it back. But as far as like a mitigation area, we'll take that back as a great suggestion. Thanks.
I don't need that, I can talk very loud.
They won't be able to hear you recording.
Recording.
The police chief, you just kind of skimmed over, but you didn't mention that the campfires are one of the main things that are causing these fires. And are these people, are the ones that live in the woods mostly? Can they hear me?
So I didn't know definitively whether they did, but I think it is a very distinct possibility. I think campfires in the woods at any time of year is a very bad idea, but particularly where the season is so dry. And I think that we will work more closely with the fire department to address those campers who are burning. It's difficult, right? We currently lack the ability to simply say, you can't be in the woods. We really kind of have to catch them in the act, so to speak, which is sometimes more easily said than done. But it is something that we're committed to.
I'm Pat Liberti. I live at 3 Lions Lane, which is the Highland condominiums. About a year ago, we had a brush fire started by homeless in the back of the property. This year, it was really very close to our homes. The question I want to thank the police and the fire department because they did go door to door and warn people, as well as calling Cindy, our manager, to put on the irrigation system, which we did. She also put in place osculators to kind of continue to water. Fortunately, we have well water, so it isn't a tax on the city. But my concern is we now have the homeless people going to residents that own their property saying, why did you call the police and report us to the police about being in the camp? I know one of them got a 72-hour, but they don't care. They really don't follow. They know enough that they know the system. I don't think there's any meat to the ordinance that you have in place. It needs to be a shorter period of time, and they need to be fined more than they are because it's not working, the $50 or whatever. It's really a danger to the people, and we pay a lot of money in taxes. So I really feel I admire the police and fire very much, and I think we're trying to mitigate so that the impact won't be as bad the next time. So if there are things that you think that we can do as a community, let us know. But I really feel that we need to put some bones and put some meat to the ordinance. I know you have it, but the cops go up there, the community impact unit goes up there, they give them the notice, but they shouldn't be harassing and going to people's doors and saying, why did you call the police? These people, we have rights, and I think that's the point. We're being ignored, and I think that's where the frustration comes from.
So I want to speak directly to that idea, and as I said, crafting that ordinance was very difficult and kind of a painful process. Anybody who was in the room, I think, will agree with me. But you have my word that I will readdress it. And I know, and I've received commitment from a number of the city councilors that they will at least listen to our concerns and try to improve on the ordinance, because I agree with you. As I said, it was specifically and very narrowly directed towards that encampment. But what we didn't do, and this is on us and me, because I was one of the ones who crafted the ordinance, we didn't consider other areas where we might want to use it. And I can tell you there's some other ones that I want to address as well. We have a lot of car camping in Salem, not a fire hazard, but where somebody loses their home and has to live in their car, I'm very sympathetic to that person. Where that somebody has a home and has driven to Salem and is just camping on our streets because they don't want to pay the fee at Winter Island, no, that we need to be able to address that as well. So there are a number of areas in that ordinance that I agree need to be addressed. And as I said, you have my word that I will address it.
Yeah, okay. So, in taking words a little literally, when you had said no outside fires, one of the things that I knew moving into the condo complex, as an example, we were not allowed to have, A, fire pits, B, charcoal grills, right? I don't know if we're still allowed to have propane grills, which have a fire, or if, say, we need electrical grills, which are available. But of course, electrical grills would be safer, and it's at least something to think of. If not for city regulation, it would be for condo boards and homeowners associations. Has to be away. Okay, so currently it's, anyway, that was my clarification when you said no fire. Can be taken literally.
My name is Cindy Anselmo, and I manage the Cloister condominium and the Highland condominium, both of which experienced the wrath of these fires, and also the homeless people. And unfortunately, the person that I think was involved in the fire, prior to this fire in October, 2 weeks before that, we had a brush fire at the end of Tanglewood Lane. And I think it was caused, even though I can't prove it and nobody can, I think it was caused by this individual. Now that individual, I found out, doesn't even live in Salem. And the police and the community impact unit are well aware of this individual. He comes from Philadelphia, came to New York, went to New York from Philadelphia, ended up in Salem, and he feels that Salem is a sanctuary city. So he feels that the property where the Highland condo is located and behind Walmart is owned by the city of Salem and is considered sanctuary, just like behind Farrell Court in the Cloister condominium, which is not accurate. And I just want to get clarification from, I guess, the mayor. Salem is not a sanctuary city, correct?
So there's no one legal definition of a sanctuary city, and Salem has an ordinance that prohibits the city from not providing municipal services to somebody on the basis of their immigration status or collecting information about their immigration status. So that's what our ordinance says. I don't know if you would call it a sanctuary city in the respect that it doesn't prohibit the city from. In fact, we do cooperate with federal law enforcement. It doesn't prohibit the city from doing that. It just says that city services are provided to anyone in the community, regardless of their immigration status, and we don't ask for immigration status unless required to by state or federal law.
The homeless, why did they tell me? And they said it too. I'm not sure if one of the community impact unit people were there when he said it, but he actually came onto the property and he sat down in the middle of the cul-de-sac writing out notes that he was putting on townhouses. And that's why I called the police, to protect residents. And the issue is that he claimed to them and to me that Salem is a sanctuary city, which allows him, as a homeless person, to live in the Salem woods. And I told him it's not, it's all private property. And that's why we were able to get a no trespass order issued against him. But it's the safety of the people that live in these communities.
Yeah, I can't speak to what he may have claimed or said or the basis for why he was there, but if the city has an ordinance against camping on public property. If it's private property, you're able to get a no trespass order. And that is, I'm not sure why he was saying the things he was saying to you.
The people in the properties that I manage. And unfortunately, Cloister is a property between Farrell Court and a section of the Cloister condominium that's owned by the Salem Housing Authority. And these people are actually going through that to get into the Salem Woods. If I'm able, as the manager of the property, private property, to get a no trespass order against an individual who's actually camping or living in the woods, why can't the city do the same thing to make sure they don't end up living? You shouldn't have to move them around. They just shouldn't be there. Because every time we had another situation about 6 years ago at the end of Carriage Lane, Lions Lane, where there was a fellow and it was proven that he started a fire. He didn't put out his campfire properly and it started a brush fire in the back. We do everything we can. The fact that we put out oscillators, we had homeowners coming out all around the perimeter. Unfortunately, even the fire department, they worked their butts off. Then they had a situation where the water main broke. So they didn't have any water at all. You know, and I was hoping, we have a well on the property, which has a lot of pressure, but we didn't have the right connection. And there are things that you can do, but there's things that we did as a community that didn't stop it. These fires within 10 feet of these homes, and these homes are like 6-unit and 4-unit attached units made out of wood. People could have died, there could have been property damage. We have to do more.
So let me speak to, I will speak with the housing authority, their property in regards to that, as far as no trespass and what kind of measures they can take around posting that for no trespassing. It's not city property, it's housing authority property. And I don't know if you want to speak about the process for no trespass and people's right on public property.
So housing authority property can be no trespassed, right? The manager or individual people who live there can get that done. But for city property, for woods property, for city parks, very, very difficult to have somebody no trespassed. The only time I've ever seen it is as a result of sentencing for a crime. So it's not something that that is a road that's too difficult to go down when it comes to public property. Better off with a no camping ordinance.
For Tim, the homeless people, and I know they've pitched tents along that area across from Traders Way and right at the intersection of Traders Way and First Street. And when the police have been notified, they've taken it down. But it keeps popping up. And my concern is a lot of these people need medical help. And I know that they don't want to go, they don't want to be controlled by the government. That's why they're living in the woods. But something's got to be done to protect the people from being harmed.
Look, I mean, this is something we deal with every day, and we've been dealing with very intensely for a year, the last year, where the homeless problem has gotten exacerbated. But I'd love to tell you that I have a solution to the homeless problem, but this is a nationwide problem, and it's a mental health problem, it's a substance use problem, and it's an economic problem, and not individually, right? Those are three different circles that overlap in a lot of cases. And I've said this before, this is not a problem that we can arrest our way out of, right? Even if we were to make homelessness illegal, right? Anybody on the street who doesn't have a home, I can lock them up. They don't go to jail. I mean, obviously they shouldn't go to jail, but even if I were to do that, it's not like the problem is solved by putting handcuffs on them. They'd go in front of a judge, and that judge would release them the next day, and they would be back out on the street in worse shape than they were when we found them. So on the one hand, it's a problem that we're very much committed to. I have a unit in the police department that really deals with that almost exclusively. However, there are no easy solutions for this, and certainly arresting people is usually not the answer.
That's the answer either, but something has got to be done. A lot of people do a lot of talking, but nothing gets done. I don't want anything to happen. If I didn't manage the Highland condominium, that individual would have gone throughout the property and scared people. I had calls from people that were scared. They had children, and they were even afraid to go out of the house. They shouldn't be exposed to that.
I mean, I certainly agree with you, but
Plus, they came after me as well. But I mean, my door was locked, so it was okay.
Did we respond? Did the police respond? And we no trespassed him.
Yes.
Has it been bad?
Yes, I saw him back. Yeah, he's still in the woods somewhere. I don't know if it's.
What I mean, has he been back trespassing?
No. No,
I mean,
that part of it.
Small victories.
But it's other people too. It's not just him. And people know him. They know about the homeless people. But
I'm not minimizing the problem. I'm really not.
No, I understand.
But I also.
But there's going to be something else. And I understand that your hands are tied. I don't want to see the homeless people, incarcerated either. But there's got to be something else that can be done that's more fluid.
Well, I think the steps that we have available to us do tend to be those baby steps, but, I'm all ears if somebody has a better solution.
Excuse me, sir. Get somebody over here. A question.
Phil Blaskovich, 8 Admirals Lane. I've lived there for almost 29 years. I think the fire chief will back me up on this. You know that you shouldn't park vehicles on dry grass. The landscapers like to leave their equipment on the brush, and I've been gone to the city engineers because they leak gasoline, they leak diesel fuel. I've taken soil samples, there. I'm a retired research chemist. I've done gas chromatography. There are petroleum products there, plus those landscaping groups, especially in that circle, which stick right in like a middle finger into the woods, they park right on top of the grass. And I've been asking not to. They let the engines run in the Bobcats. And dry grass, I'm a son of a fireman. My dad was FDNY. He just passed away recently, but I was a fire buff, and he learned simple things. You don't play with fire on a windy day. You don't park any vehicle on dry grass when it's very dry and lack of rain. And we saw it in an extraordinary length of time without measurable rainfall. That's all. I would like to see the city council perhaps pass an ordinance that can't park on the property, the grasslands of the Great Salem Pond area, because it is a watershed reserve. And as they say, it also pollutes the pond, because you can have one drop of water in your gas tank, it won't do anything, but one drop of gasoline in your water makes it unpotable. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Burke. I live at 65 Broad Street in Salem. I had a couple suggestions, and some of them are long-term. The city bought Highland Park in 1906. They built the golf course, I think, in 1932. But between 1906 and 1932, in the park superintendent report, you'll see that they did build a 10-foot fire road from the front of the woods to the back of the woods. Up until 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been in favor of that. I'm all keep the woods pure, but I think we might be coming to the point where we should be building a dirt road through the woods. And as we all get senior, that road might serve people. The woods trail is moderately difficult, and so I think the city should look into that long term. Second thing is getting water to the woods. The golf course has water pressure. The third green is deep into the edge of the woods there. The fifth tee box is deep along the woods, so they might be good places to put hydrants. There's Fire Lode, and then there's Bittersweet. Bittersweet is particularly dangerous because it brings the fire up to the canopy of the woods. So, if you're a firefighter, so I'm not an expert on this, but if you're down on the ground fighting a fire, that's bad. But if the Bittersweet brings the fire up to the canopy, that's a much more dangerous fire. So, for instance, you can see it down at Winter Island, where we've been cutting bittersweet the past 4 years, where the bittersweet really overcomes the trees. And it does that in the woods. Birds carry bittersweet all through the woods, so there are pockets where it's really deep, where it's really dangerous. I would say that the city needs coordination with its woodlands. We have acres of woodlands that are under the purview of the Concom, under the purview of the Park and Rec, under the purview of School Department, and then the Housing Authority owns that area behind Farrell Court. But there's no coordinated thought about how to deal with the woods. If you're, Yellowstone, it's a huge piece of land and it doesn't need to be managed. But our woods needs to be managed because it's invaded on all sides by these invasive plants. And I don't want to be sarcastic, but I don't think we spend 10 cents on our woods. I don't know of any capital project since 2008 when the planning department did write a trails project. And then I should give the Concom, they did have a trails project at the Forest River Conservation Area. But I do think the planning department is totally divorced from our woodland areas. They don't think about it. They don't write grants. And, we should work on it. You can't control all the invasives and all the wooded areas in Salem, but there should be a priority list. Let's see if I have anything else. We're coming up to March. March is always a red flag month. And so watch out for March. It's going to be tough then, too. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Skylar Ward. I'm on 4 Forest Avenue. I missed the early part of this, so I'm very sorry if this was already addressed. Fire Chief, question for you with coordination with like the Lynn Fire Department with the Lynn fires. During the fires in Salem, was there any point where, other than like lack of personnel, where there was like an overwhelming point where additional resources for the fire department would have been helpful to address? Oh, it was brought up early. Never mind. You're good.
Yes, my name is Dennis Colbert. I'm on Clark Street in Salem. Behind me, we have a large parcel that has contamination. And one of my concerns is if a fire was to get going there and it went underground and started burning the contamination, is the Salem Fire Department equipped to handle something like that? And what effects would that have on residents? If that stuff comes up in the smoke, do we know what danger that is to residents? Are you familiar with the parcel I'm talking about behind Tropical Products?
Yeah, I am. We would rely on the state in that instance. We have regional state hazmat teams, and in identified areas, I'll take my we rely on the state. Whenever we have hazmat incidents, there's 5 districts within the state, and we would call in the team. We are familiar with the hazardous material sites in the city, and when we ever have a fire in those locations, we take a lot into consideration. If it's a surface burn, some leaves, branches, and twigs, so forth, that would be less than ideal, but not as concerning. If it were to be like we had up off of Highland Ave, 3 to 4 weeks of underground burning, I certainly would address the matter with the state. They would bring in their subject matter experts and guide us. We did have a fire in 1996 off of Ravenna, where there was a big cleanup site over there in the years, and they had a site covered with rubber tarps. And the rubber tarp caught fire and then burned away about a third of what was at that site. It has since been cleaned up. So it's not unprecedented, and it's certainly a concern, but we are aware of the sites. And if something were to go underground in an area like that, I certainly, in my commanders would certainly bring in the resources needed.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm trying to think what I can take away from this. Number one, thank you, thank you, thank you. My heart was in my chest. Well, obviously. But that night with the fires and everything, and I talked with you about this, we were so grateful. But number two, we do everything we can, like this fellow here said, and we do everything. We can't do this, we can't do that. But how can they put those fires? What do they light their fires with? Matches and wood? Is that it? Are they using grills? I don't know what they're using. Are they using propane?
I could answer that question.
Okay. I don't know. No, I'm just saying that. We do everything. You've got a lot of concerned citizens. And I hope we come up with a solution. Amend the ordinance, whatever you have to do. I'll sign for it, even though I didn't sign in tonight. But anyway, thank you, okay? I have one more question. Somebody gave me a hero blanket to put on the stove in case of a fire, and I have it. Have you ever heard of those?
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Are they okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And fire extinguishers.
Absolutely. Smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, top of the box.
I mean, I need a takeaway. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie Tucker. I live on First Street and was right in the heart of it, neighbor of Tim's. So first and foremost, I want to thank the fire chief and his whole department. It was amazing. It was amazing to watch. And to watch the National Guard going over our heads carrying water from Spring Pond or wherever. So really, it was an incredible job. It was the perfect storm, a dry October, but a fire needs a spark. And I hope that you all hear what we are living with the woods right behind us. I could speak to First Street. There's quite the little community. So I'll bring Panhandle into it because it does go along with it. The two individuals that we believe started the fire, because it does take a spark, both smoke, both work the corner at Traders Way, and First Street. They're regulars. I travel that to and from work and otherwise all the time. Someone asked what kind of fuel. I have a picture. They have a beautiful Ryobi generator that they hide behind the electric box at McDonald's. It's quite a little thing that they have going, and I think the community impact team knows more than we do. Fire takes a spark to start. There's our spark. I think, nobody really wants to say it, but that's what's going on. Outside burning, all of that, we follow rules as condominium owners, and it's good to remind us, but that's not what's causing this. The staging area while the firefighters were fighting behind Tim's unit, it was amazing to see trucks from all over the state. But as I traveled to work and went around the corner, here comes the transient right across, right through, going into the fire, into the woods again. So, I kudos to the impact team. I don't know how or what you do about it, really. It seems like you're doing all you can. And other than us reporting it, I don't know what we do. But two things, that panhandling, from what I understand, it can't be at important intersections. I don't know if I'm right about that they can be asked to be moved along where it's dangerous.
Where there's a median, they can be on the median. I mean, if they're literally in traffic, yes, you're impeding automobile traffic. But if there's a median, SJC in Massachusetts has held that it's, you're allowed.
Good to know. That's crazy, but we have people leaving blankets and food for them. I don't know who this is that's doing it, but it's certainly encouraging. But a question that I had was the 72-hour notice in the woods. So if you give it to them, does that cover a certain area?
It hasn't gone to court. It's a relatively new ordinance. But yes, right, if they move, we don't have the answer is no, we don't have a set. How far?
Because I'm thinking they're getting served. How far are they moving that then you need to reserve them? I was just curious how that works.
Again, I don't have a specific distance. I would say what's reasonable. But if they move, they moved. I can't say, I served you here. He counts over there.
So it can't be generally for the woods, out of the woods. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Patty, I think that's about it. I have a couple comments I'd like to make. As Chief Miller was talking about, the ordinance was really geared towards the encampment downtown. We never took the woods into consideration. And it is going to be looked at again from what I understand. But one thing I want to say is a couple of people have sat there, and we commend Chief Dion, Chief Miller for all the work that they do. Unfortunately, our society today thrives on negativity. Okay? So you never see a write-up in the paper about Salem PD who got that couple into a home. That doesn't get in the paper. The only thing that gets in the paper is if people think they're harassing the people. So every now and then it would be nice for somebody to come out and say, hey, you know what? The project or the things that are implemented in the city are actually working. But you never see that in the newspaper. And it's very unfortunate because our police department, our fire department, the mayor, even the councilors, we all feel and are listening to you, but there's groups out there that outnumber us, that advocate for these people. You just brought up people leaving them blankets and stuff like that. And this whole meeting wasn't supposed to be about just the homeless, it was about the fires and what we can do to prevent fires like this from happening again. But as far as the homeless goes, if people would acknowledge the good that the police department and the fire department does more so that the public sees that, it's going to diminish the negativity. The negativity right now in the news and on the newspapers outweighs the positive. And that's not the case. There's many instances where, the gentleman that was up behind Walmart, from what I understand, he's moved on. He moved into Lynn somewhere, and it was a mental health issue. But I'm just trying to give credit where credit is due, instead of them always getting negative response from the community. Not you people individually, I'm not speaking to you, but you showed up. You were concerned. You're concerned about your property. A couple things like, Chief Dion was saying, and I'm to blame, I do it at my own yard. If you have a leaf blower, don't blow the leaves into the woods. I know it's a lot easier than picking them up, but all you're doing is you're adding fuel into the woods. Houses that have pine trees behind them, as everybody knows, pine needles are very flammable. Don't blow them into the woods, because all you're doing is just leaving that there to catch. So, like he said, there was a lot of websites. Go in and look at them, and all of that stuff's right there on the website. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. And again, we'll all be here for anything else.
I just don't want to forget this. When you all were asked how many of you have code, not everyone's hand went up. Michael Corley is in the back there, and he will sign you up for Code Red. It's really, really important. It's not only important for the fires and information about that, but if there's a water main break or anything else happening in your neighborhood, we can get information out to you. So Michael has been here. If you need to sign up, he will help you. So that's all I wanted to say there. And Chief.
One last item. I wanted to address the gentleman. He made a comment. I guess I wasn't clear enough when I said no outside burning. In the ordinance, it clearly states it needs to be a UL approved appliance. Propane grills are UL approved appliances. Electric grills and that kind of stuff. Perfectly safe. Use them how they're supposed to be used. All right. When I say outside burning, I'm talking about chimeneas, fire pits, grills with charcoal. You can use a charcoal grill. Some of the developments don't want them. You can use them if you follow the UL regulations and the requirements.
Okay, thank you. Come on up here and speak with people if you'd like.